Welcome back to the MarketGeist Podcast. Today we're talking about trends. And more specifically, we're talking about how product teams, founders, strategy leads, and decision makers can stop confusing visibility with importance. Because the modern internet is extremely good at making everything look urgent. A new tool appears, a new phrase starts showing up everywhere. A few founders post about it. A consultant makes a framework. Someone on LinkedIn writes a dramatic thread about how this changes everything forever. And suddenly half the industry is acting like if you don't react by Tuesday, your company will be found dead behind a dumpster of failed roadmaps. But here's the truth. Not every trend matters to your market. And not every trend that matters deserves a product investment right now. That is the heart of today's episode. How do you do trend research that actually helps product teams? Not trend watching for entertainment. Not trend watching as theater. Not trend watching because everyone else seems nervous and you'd like to join the ritual. Real trend research should help a team answer one question. Is this something we should act on? And if so, how? That's it. Everything else is decoration. Let's start with the basic problem. A lot of trend analysis is shallow, and it is basically, people are talking about this. Investors are funding this. Competitors are mentioning this. It's all over social media. Someone important said it's the future. Fine, those are signals. But a signal is not a strategy. Just because a trend is visible does not mean it is relevant. Just because it is relevant does not mean it is urgent. And just because it is urgent does not mean your team is the one that should respond first. This is where product teams get themselves into trouble. They jump too quickly from, we noticed something, to, we need to build around it. That's how you end up with bloated products, confused messaging, scattered priorities, and features that were born from panic rather than from actual customer value. So the first rule of useful trend research is this. A trend should be evaluated in the context of your market, your customer, your timing, and your strategic position, not in the context of general hype. Now, when I say trend, I mean anything that could change how customers think, buy, evaluate, expect, or behave. That could be a new technology, a new workflow, a regulatory shift, a new behavior pattern, changes in buyer expectations, changes in pricing tolerance, changes in trust, changes in how competitors position themselves, or changes in the category itself. Some trends are loud and obvious, others are quieter but much more important. And that's another trap. Teams often focus on the trends with the most attention rather than the trends with the most consequence. Those are not always the same. Yeah, a trend can be famous and useless, and it can be quiet and transformational, and it can also be very real, very relevant, and still not something you should act on immediately. And that is why trend research needs structure. So let's talk about how to evaluate a trend properly. There are 5 questions I would ask. Question 1, is this trend changing customer expectations? This is the first thing that matters, because a trend becomes strategically relevant when it starts shaping what customers assume is normal. That is when the ground shifts. For example, customers may now expect faster onboarding, more automation, more self-service, more AI support, more transparency, more integrations, better reporting, lower implementation friction, or more personalization. The key is not whether the trend is exciting. The key is whether it is changing what customers now compare you against. Because once customer expectations move, your product is being evaluated in a new context, whether you like it or not. So ask, is this trend changing what my customers now expect from tools like ours? If the answer is yes, pay attention. Question 2. Does this trend affect our specific audience? This sounds obvious. It is not. A trend can be real and still not matter much to your core segment. For example, a trend might matter deeply in enterprise and barely matter in SMB. Or it may matter in developer tools but not in finance software. Or it may matter to power users and not at all to casual users. Or it may matter in the US first and reach Europe later. Or it may matter to early adopters while your buyers remain stubbornly practical and immune to fashionable nonsense, which frankly is sometimes refreshing. The point is, do not evaluate trends in the abstract. Evaluate them against your actual audience. Ask who is affected, how much are they affected, what part of our customer base cares, what kind of customer pain or demand is this creating. If you skip that step, you risk overreacting to a market signal that belongs mostly to someone else's market. Question 3. Is this trend creating real behavior change or just conversation? This one is critical because people love to talk about trends long before they behave differently because of them. A trend becomes much more important when it changes. Buying criteria, budget allocation, product usage, onboarding expectations, evaluation frameworks, tool adoption, competitive comparisons, or internal priorities inside customer organizations. That is behavior. And behavior matters more than chatter. 1,000 posts about something are not as useful as 10 clear signs that buyers now choose differently because of it. So look for evidence like competitor product changes, pricing changes, new categories emerging, shifts in sales conversations, support requests, user demand, workflow changes, hiring patterns, customer language, or repeat objections in the buying process. Those things are far more valuable than hype alone. So ask, is this trend merely visible or is it changing what people actually do? That question filters out a lot of nonsense. Question 4. Are we strategically well placed to respond? This is where discipline enters the room. Even if a trend is real, relevant, and behavior changing, you still have to ask whether you are the right team to act on it now. That depends on things like your product maturity, your brand position, your technical foundation, your customer base, your team capacity, your business model, and your current strategic priorities. Sometimes a trend is real, but chasing it would pull you away from your actual advantage. That happens all the time. A company sees momentum around a trend, rushes toward it, and ends up weakening the thing that made it valuable in the first place. So the question is not just, should someone respond to this trend? The question is, should we respond to this trend, and are we positioned to do it credibly? Because there is a huge difference between strategic adaptation and random wandering. Question 5. If we act, what is the smallest smart move? This is where product teams can stay sane. A lot of trend response fails because teams assume the response has to be large. A new trend appears and suddenly the roadmap starts looking like an over-caffeinated manifesto. But often the smartest response is smaller. Maybe it is a messaging shift, a landing page change, a lightweight experiment, an integration, a workflow improvement, a prototype, a small feature, a customer interview round, or better research before committing. Not every trend needs a massive build. Sometimes the right move is to learn faster. Sometimes the right move is to reposition. Sometimes the right move is to wait deliberately. And sometimes the right move is to do absolutely nothing while everyone else sprints into a ditch, which can be a very underrated strategic move. So ask, what is the smallest intelligent response that gives us signal without creating chaos? That question keeps teams from turning market curiosity into roadmap self-harm. Now let's talk about one of the most dangerous phrases in product strategy. We need to do something with this trend. No, not yet. First, you need to know whether the trend matters, why it matters, for whom it matters, how it affects decision-making in your market, and what kind of response fits your strategy. Otherwise, the team is just reacting emotionally to movement. And emotional roadmap construction is how products become bloated, confused, and suspiciously exhausting to use. Strong teams do not chase every visible thing. They learn to distinguish between hype, emerging signal, active market shift, and strategic necessity. That is a much more mature way to work. So what does good trend research look like in a real business workflow? It should not be random. It should not be, Someone saw a post. It should not be. A competitor mentioned AI 17 times. It should not be. A VC on social media wrote like the future was personally calling. Good trend research is pattern-based. It looks at repeated signals across multiple sources, movement over time, impact on customer expectations, changes in competitor behavior, actual user demand, sales conversations, broader category evolution, and strategic fit for your company. This is where MarketGeist becomes useful, because trend research becomes much more valuable when you can collect, organize, compare, and interpret signals across the market instead of just reacting to isolated noise. MarketGeist helps teams see what is surfacing repeatedly, how it connects to competitors and customers, and whether it looks like a real shift or just temporary noise wearing a nice suit. That helps teams move from, "This seems important," to, "We understand what this means and how we should respond." And that is the whole point. Let's do a practical example. Imagine a new AI capability becomes trendy in your category. A weak response would be, "We need AI in the roadmap now." A better response would be, "Are customers explicitly asking for it? Are competitors building it into core workflows or just marketing it? Does it solve a painful problem or just create a flashy demo? Does it improve speed, accuracy, cost, insight, usability, or trust? Is it something our audience would adopt? And can we implement it in a way that supports our product positioning?" What is the smallest intelligent move we could test? That is how adults handle trends, or at least how product adults should. So here's a practical trend evaluation framework you can use this week. When a trend appears, ask, is it changing customer expectations? Does it affect our specific audience? Is it changing real behavior or just generating attention? Are we well positioned to respond? What is the smallest smart move we could make? If you answer those questions honestly, a lot of apparent urgency disappears, and what remains is usually far more useful. Let's land this with the core takeaway. The purpose of trend research is not to help you chase hype. It is to help you recognize meaningful shifts early enough to respond intelligently. That is the job. Not trend theater, not panic, not roadmap vandalism disguised as innovation. Real trend research protects focus while improving timing, and that combination is incredibly valuable. Because in fast-moving markets, the winners are not always the teams that react first. They're often the teams that understand sooner. Thanks for listening to the MarketGeist Podcast. If this episode was useful, share it with a product manager, founder, strategist, or BI lead who has ever sat through a meeting where one trendy buzzword somehow tried to hijack the roadmap. Now, in the next episode, we'll talk about finding market gaps before your competitors do, and how to spot opportunities hidden inside segments, unmet needs, and weak positioning. See you next time.